People are getting comfortable with electric bikes and electric cars, and the cars, of course, look like regular cars and have to compete with regular cars. But as we transition over the next 10 years, what is the future going to look like? And what can we do? A lot of sci-fi is involved with this. But I think there's a lot of current vehicles that are being produced, both in manufactured concept cars, as well as many small innovative companies that are working on very innovative new designs between bicycles and electric cars. One of the factors we need to consider is our economies and what actually makes our economies go. And it's essentially fossil fuels. This is a direct correlation between oil consumption and fossil fuel consumption and our economies. How strong is our economies? So the countries that use the most oil and fossil fuels have the strongest economies and provide the best lifestyles for their population that they can do. And so that's been the driver for our populations and our distribution into their cities and how we do technology. But this all needs to change, and we need to change it in the next 10 years. So we need to transform civilization across the globe, not just here in the United States. So the largest users up here, Japan, Germany, India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, all these countries need to reduce in total volume the amount of oil that's being consumed. So that brings the line over. And also we need to help the smaller economies, at least on a per capita basis, to rise their fossil fuel up maybe a little bit so that they can actually have an equal lifestyle to those of us in the wealthier countries. So that we need to shift this whole line over dramatically in the next 10 years. Another factor that impacts how we change and transform, the higher the speed, the more the accidents, the more people die. So if we slow down, we will save more lives. Lots of research is going on now to say, oh yeah, slow down, please. It helps everybody. And then it's not equal across peoples. You have the African Americans and the American Indians are being impacted a lot more by faster cars and having more accidents because they've in more congested areas, the cheaper areas of town. And so it's not equal as to who dies from traffic accidents for pedestrians and bicyclists. In cars, are going to look more and more like planes and have that shape more as aerodynamic as possible because we're going faster and faster. And as you go above 50 miles an hour, the air drag becomes critical and changes our efficiency dramatically. And it's not a linear function. It's an additive or exponential type function. So let's slow down to at least 50 miles an hour and make it much more efficient in our driving so that we use less fuel total to get from here to there. One of the factors involved is the gasoline cars are slightly different engines, different power source, different transmissions. And so gas-powered cars are most efficient at about 60 miles an hour because using their gears with very high-powered explosions happening in the engines and using their the transmissions with gears on it. So as long as you're not going faster or slower, which is deceleration, acceleration, F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. As long as you're going the same speed, the most efficient for gas-powered cars is around 60 miles an hour. Different for electric cars. Electric cars are slow chemical reactions that are feeding a motor, usually in a single transmission drive, and so this direct drive. So electric cars are much more efficient between 20 and 30 miles per hour, and then they decrease in efficiency as you go up because of the air drag that's happening as you go above even 30 miles an hour. But still fairly efficient up to maybe 50 to 60, and then severe drop-off. So we need to stay below 60, and so even our freeways need to be dropped down to maybe 50, 55 miles per hour, and our city streets drop down to 20, 30 miles an hour on average across our city streets. And that would be the most efficient for climate change action. Right now, we're in tragedy of the commons. We have individuals have easy access to many of the resources, particularly energy, and we're allowed to use as much energy as we like to make our lives as happy as possible. So what's happening is my time is more important than anything. So we have 1 car per driver, 2,000-pound big cars that are safer for the driver, And with speeds going, because my time, that's going fast, I can get there faster. My time is more important. And the car can sit idle there, and I don't care because I have the ability to get in when I want, go where I want, as fast as I want, and I want to get there. So this ego part of our American culture is creating a tragedy of the commons globally, because what we do here is extending to other countries. So in 20 years, we need to change this completely. This whole attitude needs to change to the common good. We need to work toward a common good, working toward community. So have one car for 3 drivers. It's going to be less than 1,000 pounds, so it's safe for everybody, not just for me. So everybody is equally safe. We need speeds under 55 total for everywhere, and even slower for cities. And cars are being used by multiple people. And we need to get to a common good attitude. We currently have 3 levels of transport. We can walk on sidewalks, we can bike in bike lanes, and we can take cars down in the car lane on the streets. However, these new electric vehicles are going to be expanding the possibilities for bikes. So you have e-bikes and even hybrids with 2, 3, and 4 wheels going into bike lane, traveling 15 to 20 miles an hour, and microcars and trikes, which can get up to 60 miles an hour, and on average will travel 25 to 50 miles per hour going to car lanes. And this is mostly for cities rather than our fast freeways, and is being used around the world, especially in China right now. And these cars are only 3 to 5 feet wide. They are much lower cost to purchase it, and also to use it over time to maintain it. Electric cars have been around since 1884, and if it wasn't for the gasoline combustion engine coming in, we'd all be driving electric cars now. But very soon after Henry Ford came in with his Ford Model T, that all of these just went away, and the only electric cars that have come in since then that had any popularity was the GM EV1, which was negatively marketed so that GM proved that yes, nobody wants these, and they eventually went away. They were on their lease programs, lead acid batteries. Technology wasn't quite there, but possibilities was there. Honda Insight came in with nickel metal halide batteries, and they worked better. They worked actually pretty good, but there were some mechanical issues, technical issues, and only a 2-seater, so not very popular, so that kind of dropped out of the marketplace. The first really popular one that worked well was the Nissan Leaf 2010, over 10 years ago, 12 years ago now, and still in the marketplace and present, using the lithium battery systems, and 4 doors, 5 passengers, looks and acts like a regular car. So that became the standard, and then there's been improvements since then. We now have lots of electric vehicles in the cars. Leaf is still here. We have the Chevy Bolt, which has become very popular, which has over 2-mile range. The Teslas have even further range, a little more luxury, a little bit faster, farther. Even Ford's now has an electric light pickup truck called the Lightning that seems to be popular and growing. Motorcycles are here with electricity, however they're not quite up to the distance, and so even though Harley Davidson's got into them and sells them, these are being worked on, and if they can get the mileage range up, they'll become much more popular because they're just as fast, even faster, and even off the line, faster than your gasoline engines. A lot of fun to drive. New players on the market, a lot of smaller folks, companies that are getting together. You've got the Lucid, high-end electric for Lexus comparisons. It does even better than the Lexus in both luxury, in distance, and in speed and acceleration. So, but that's $70,000 vehicles, but these are being snapped up as they're made. They're not under mass production yet, still low production. The Rivian pickup truck is a light pickup truck, good for camping and light uses for a pickup truck. Very competitive at $70,000, and they're going against the Lightning, the Ford Lightning, but also Chevy, and others are also trying to do light electric trucks right now. Not really great on towing yet, but maybe soon. We have the Aptera, the most efficient car that can get up to 300 miles per gallon theoretically, and but they can go really fast. They can go 110 miles per hour. They have up to 1,000-mile range. They're quite stable at these speeds. very fast off the line, 3.5 seconds, 0 to 60, but only holds 2 people, so a limited market for that. But the price is getting down, $30,000 for the base model, so that's reasonably priced. Another new one is the Helix, which is mostly for single people, but you can also get two people, one behind the other in a tricycle. It goes 100 miles an hour, 200-mile range, and so as a second vehicle or even as a primary commute vehicle would work wonders for us here. And I'm looking forward to getting one of these myself here soon. And I've already invested in Aptera because I also would like one of those as our 2 vehicles. So for long distance, Aptera, and then for short distance, the Helix when I'm doing my own thing in town. What's interesting is that China, the hottest item in China is the Wuling Hongguang Mini EV, and GM is the partner. GM could probably get these produced, given a 6-month leeway time. They could probably have these up and running in the marketplace here in the U.S. easily because they're being partners. This is the most popular car in China right now, selling over 500,000 cars in the last 2 years. It's got just adequate range, adequate speed, and can carry 4 people, 2 adults and 2 kids. So the young folks are just taking off and buying these up like hotcakes. Electric bikes. For every type of a regular bike, there's now an electric bike in all sorts of price ranges in here, but on average, a $1,000 bike will get you a fairly decent low-end model. $2,000 gets you a good electric bike, but you can go up from there. You'd even get a road bikes up to $8,000 plus, and so that older folks can actually keep up with the younger folks now on these long-distance fast rides. And what's interesting is car companies are getting in the game, and they're now offering with their electric vehicles, because there's a high correlation. Those that have electric bikes also have electric cars. So they're partnering with the bikes companies and putting them together as a package for sale. And we have several local US-based companies here on the West Coast especially. These are all West Coast companies from Rad City, Blix, Magnum, Averton, and Ride One Up. So you can actually go down and test drive at these locations, and slowly the market is building up and more dealerships are showing up, more service. Service is really important on these. You got to be able to get parts. So I highly recommend buying from one of these US companies rather than internet, any of the Chinese companies that are available on the internet. We can put cargo both on top, in front, and behind on these vehicles. I even can take my kayak down to the river and do some paddling down there and come on back. The best cargo bike right now is considered the Blix. Has the highest cargo. It has 400-pound capacity for both rider and cargo, with over 200 various ways you can set up the front and rear end cargos that are all interchangeable, plus an extra 2 batteries, so you can get up to 80 miles in one charge. So that's the one to watch here coming up. Yeah. Then speaking of cargo bikes, all sorts of possibilities are there. Even the UPS is getting into cargo bikes. In Pennsylvania, they're testing these out to see if they can work, and it looks like a good possibility. But most of these are trikes with the cargo on 2 wheels side by side, and either in the front or in the back, mostly in the back. Rad City's got their model that they're working on, innovative. You can use them for, even with a little bit of lift on them, for sliding heavy soils and down. So even on farms you could use these. You can taxis for people, moving boxes around your site, even food services, small food services. We already have ice cream trucks on bikes, but we can do a lot more since their carrying capacity is much higher and they can get further and faster. So large cargo. And so one of the nicest vehicles that's pointed out is with the data here, with a large cargo in the front, with extra batteries, mid-engine, and this can carry a lot of material a great distance. But we can still stick with 2 wheels, put a little cargo in front, and moms can take their kids and cargo and groceries back and forth throughout all day long without getting into a car. Lots of electric vehicles that are smaller, mostly for sidewalks. So you have single person uses, mostly for kids, but even adults can now use these various scooters. I myself have this Zap scooter in the center, and it worked pretty well, but it was just a little bit too slow on the road for cars. And I'll talk about ride sharing and sharing the road, and difficulties there if you're not quite keeping up with the cars and they're honking at you because you're not going fast enough for them. But we have to watch out for sidewalks. All these vehicles are now going onto sidewalks. So how do pedestrians deal with these in that lane versus, and they're not allowed in the car lane. All right, so with lots of conflicts possibly. In bicycles, upgrading into compartmentalized, hooded, weatherproof vehicles. One of my favorites is the Fricker Pod bike from Denmark up here, completely enclosed, heating, cooling, has electricity as well as pedaling that you can do. It's a quad car, comfortable to get in. The hood lifts up, you get to climb in, hood comes down, and you stay in the bike. These are all for bike lanes. These originated from the Quattro Velo, which is a 0 to 80 mile per hour, human powered only, if you have the right aerodynamic shape. So people are using this shape and creating these other vehicles from them. The ELF in Arizona, it stands for electric, light, and fun. So these are vehicles that are selling down there and in other locations and doing very well. And then other folks in England, we've got Drycycle. In the US, we also have the Sunox Screecher, which is in Maine for getting around town. So you get some rain protection, but still get around, and even for as a workhorse to carry around things in this back area cargo compartment. Works really well. England has the Iris, which is a very fancy tricycle that'll be reasonably priced that you can get in. And then we have 100% with the Leaf down here, 100% electricity. And one wheel, small wheel in the front, two wheels in the back. Doesn't go very fast, doesn't go very far, but it's a nice price point. You can get there and back to work, commute, and park and find a place. So highly popular in the Netherlands right now and in other parts of Europe that's growing because it's hard to find a parking space. And in Italy, they've got the Cabrio Velo, which went out of business, but a good model to start with, was popular with those folks that got it, just didn't quite. There's some financing issues and marketplace acceptance on all these vehicles that are still holding it back. Safety on the roads, people are concerned about. So a lot of issues around folks that don't want to get these as the most popular thing, but these are going to be growing in the future. And then there's a step up from these quad cars that you might call them, but they're a combination where you pedal, and the pedaling does not run the motor, it runs the battery. So you add energy to the battery with your pedaling. You can pedal as much as you want, whenever you want, as fast as you want. That just charges up the battery, and then the battery actually runs the four wheels. So it's actually an electric car that gets recharged through pedaling. And so again, this is not a full electric car, but it's that in-between step up. And one of these went out of business, and one of them is doing well. The City Q is actually doing well, whereas the other one, the Biohybrid, went out of business. For handicaps, there's all sorts of opportunities. We have the standard ones, the models now that are 1 to 4,000 that I looked at from Mobility Masters has these up there in Santa Rosa that you can go up and check out. But these are getting more powerful and better with longer lasting batteries. So it depends if you're using them to scoot around indoors or you're mostly outdoors, or you're going to be on sidewalks. So the concern is most of these guys not quite fast enough for the bike lane, but too fast for the sidewalks, too bumpy on the sidewalks. We're not quite set up for these to be on the road. So we have to include these in our bike paths as possibilities. And there's tricycles of various types, whether you're actually helping someone by a two-person, put a handicapped person in the front, and with someone behind pedaling and can take them anywhere in town, or a more able person can have a tricycle and carry some cargo around. These work really well, and they can work on the sidewalks or on, since they are handicapped rated. Now, what's interesting is that in Riverside, there's a gentleman here who's got a mini car for wheelchairs. So you can drive your wheelchair right on up. You can either curb or not curb. You can drive right into it. It closes up with hydraulics, electrically. You can just pull switches. Everything is hand controlled, and these are should be very popular amongst those folks who have who are in wheelchairs long term. In Indonesia, the Zibi is becoming more popular in the center of town as a alternate for the taxis. So you can get, so someone can drive 2 people around for tourism, but you can also take cargo. You can do ride shares with these. They're testing autonomous drives, just like for the Tesla, and using them for ride share. So lots of opportunity there. And I think the many of the third world countries are going after these and producing these and encouraging these on their roads a lot more than we are, because the economics just works out much better for them, and their road safety works out much better for them. You have all sorts of mini cars that are, almost every single car manufacturer in the world has a concept car ready to go. Toyota is actually testing these out, but a lot of innovation is going on by all sorts of people. The Arcimoto here in the US, down here at the bottom, has a couple different types of vehicles, FUV. So that's their actual stock. So I bought stock in FUV. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully making some money there, because this is a growing company. The factories are up and running and going. We have other ways from Canada. If you look at this list over on the side, here, Renault Twizzle, which is, you have the Arcimoto in the US, you have Italy, Asia, Poland, UK, British Columbia, France, Poland, Germany, all over the world. These things are being made and sold supposedly by smaller companies that are targeting specific audiences. Interesting, the Trigo in Poland tilts. And so when it tilts, it can go faster, and the wheels come in and out, so for stability. So in when you're in tight traffic, slow traffic, they come out to give you stability, and it tilts around corners, so it can go faster and further. And so this is the style that's going to be more popular here in the future, the Trigo right here in the center. And there's a sweet spot that makes these all worthwhile. And everyone is looking for 60 mile per hour, 100-mile range, 6 foot long, so they can park straight in and not have to parallel park. You just park straight in right next to the cars that are parked parallel. They're only 4.5 foot wide. They're 1,000 pounds or less. They're working off of mobile apps. Even your key is your phone, not an actual key. You do ride shares with these with apps. They have some auto drive capabilities are starting to enter into these models. They're 3D printed, a lot of parts on them. You can recycle a lot of these parts so you're meeting some standards there. They can be customized on the fly, on the floor as they're being assembled. So there's small operations, smaller factories that can customize on the fly. And they're trying to get down to less than 100 parts and under $12,000. So that's the sweet spot for these types of vehicles. And this is they're already on the marketplace in various parts of the world. They just need to grow in the marketplace and become more accepted. Toyota is actually testing their iRoads, various models that you can see here in France, in one of their cities as a test site to see if there's acceptance for them, to see which ones people prefer to drive, how they go. But these are tricycles that tilt and can go pretty fast, pretty far. A lot of fun to drive. So I'm hoping that these take off. We also have different roadways. This is all about ride sharing and road sharing. So on the roads, can we make the lanes smaller and more acceptable for the smaller vehicles so that we can get more lanes on the same highways, not expand the highways, not expand the lanes, but actually take 2 lanes and make them into 3 lanes. And for these smaller vehicles, that's something to think about down the road here in 10 years when we all electrify and have much smaller vehicles. And then sharing the road here, even bicycles and pedestrians, especially electric bikes or electric bikes on the dirt trails, sharing it with walkers, pedestrians. So we need to expand our bike and pedestrian paths and make them more compatible so that everybody has their own lanes and own speeds to work with them. So we have to turn these into freeways for walkers and bikers. Lots of share the road issues that I've implied here. So going down this list, because you have 5 levels of transportation now. And when you fill that gap between electric bikes and electric cars, there's lots of opportunity now for different speeds and different widths of vehicles. And now we have 5 levels of transportation rather than the 3. So we need to figure out how to accommodate all that. Infrastructure can also be changed. So we can, just like for pedestrians, we can change it and make safer roads. We can change our whole way we transport around and what type of infrastructure with our light systems. There's a lot less metal in a lot of these vehicles, so we need to have cameras instead of metal detectors for intersections, but they're becoming more popular and they're going in more often now. Rather than their metal detectors underground, we have cameras with intelligence, AI, that are working much better at detecting, especially small vehicles. I have my little scooter, and I was there for 4 lights before someone came up behind me. A car came up and said, "Okay, I'm here. We can now go." So I was stuck there at an intersection for a while. So hopefully cameras will do much better than that. And handicapped transport, we need to include a lot more of this, especially for the elderly. We have a large population of elderly now that's from the baby boomer days that are coming in that have the money to buy all these vehicles and to use in their older age, whether they be two-wheeled bicycles on up to four-wheeled cars or these mid-gap vehicles. So we need to work on that. The other thing is charging. These small vehicles, they don't need 220s. They don't need 440s. They only need 110 charging stations. So especially for multifamily units, put in share rides with these vehicles, 110 volts charging stations, and do a sharing so that in a multifamily, you only need one vehicle for every 3 or 4 people there in that site to do the transports, both to work and also for grocery shopping. So we need to do more ride sharing down in the future. So we need to integrate the ride shares throughout along with the public transport, as they're trying to do here in France in that test case. So how will we add 2 levels of transport to our current 3-level system? That's a good discussion point to carry on. There's all sorts of infrastructure that we can do for pedestrians and for bicycling. And so there's a whole list of things that can be done here in Petaluma that I know our engineers are working on to create the different intersection patterns, to create different lighting systems. So we do have engineers in Petaluma that are really motivated to work with new ideas and new plans to come up with it. We do have a bicycle pedestrian plan here in Petaluma, and new paths are being made and constructed, ADA quality, where they have to be flat enough so that even wheelchairs can be moved along easily on these paths. But one thing we want to work on is, even though we have bike paths around town, there's not an app that has safety as the #1 thing. You can go in your car and say, "Oh, I've got an RV. I want the best RV route. I want the best truck route. I want the fastest route. I want the shortest route." You can do things in your apps now for your cars. We need that for bicycles and for walking. What is the safest route to get from one part of town to the other part of town? So safe routes should include an app of how to get from one place to another as safely as possible, including both walking, biking, and public transport. Thank you for listening.